So happy Sunday. Can you hear it? Can you feel it? Can you see it? Does anyone have that hazy vision, that glorious little light-filled vision when you're walking around and it's like everything is sprinkled with fairy dust? Maybe, maybe not. But it's part of the human condition to have moments where everything softens. Whether it's the Christmas season that does it for us, whether it's the birth of a child, whether it's just a moment where we don't know where it came from, and it's not necessarily celebrated, it's not necessarily seen by everyone else. It could be as simple as walking around in a store and having a moment or witnessing something on the street. But it's one of those moments that a veil is lifted, and all of a sudden everything is glistening or glowing or sounding in a different way. And one is tuned in to the principle of harmony. One is tuned in to the beauty of the vision that is all around us that so often goes unseen or unnoticed or uncelebrated. We have entered this season of Advent, and Advent is a very metaphysical time. In Unity, we celebrate the Sundays of Advent as the birth of faith or hope, the birth of peace, the birth of love, and the birth of joy. And that order is important because those qualities in consciousness are developed and built upon. So when we have that first step of hope and we embrace hope and we allow that seed of hope to be born within us, that makes the way for peace. And only when peace is established at the core of our being can that pave the way for love, true love. True love doesn't come from the ups and downs of life. True love comes from that consistency of peace. And then from love, a natural result of that deep love, that unconditional love that acknowledges and beholds the light within each other and in our world and in the omnipresent Spirit of God. Through that practice, through that experience, is the natural birth of joy. True joy, real joy. And that's what we celebrate in this Advent season and through this time of Christmas. Now, we could think of this time as being a time of wrapping presents and shopping and all of the craziness. We could think of this time as being just, getting through the winter. It's the time that the cold starts. Some people love it, some people hate it. I'm celebrating the snow today. Or we could think of this time as an invitation, an annual invitation, a global invitation to a period of transformation, a period of quickening, a period of recognizing that this birth of the Christ child is the deepening and expanding birth of the Christ nature, the enlightened consciousness, the God consciousness within you, within me, within all of those I love, and within this very world around me. And if I am willing to take that walk, if I am willing to transform this season and make it so much more than about shopping and giving gifts and all of these other things that we celebrate so deeply, if I am willing to make it more, I can execute a shift in consciousness. And I have the support of the field of vibration, the field of energy around me in this season that is so pronounced because the hearts are open, because we are focused together. We are focusing together on this birth of love, on the Prince of Peace. So do you hear the sounds? Can you see the sounds? Joseph Campbell talks about this journey, and it's the Christ journey, and it's the journey that's told about in stories throughout the ages. And he talks about it as the hero's journey. And that hero's journey is one of overcoming and one of recognizing one's own power and one's own divinity, one's own unity with all life. And that in fact, we are all part of one body that is awakening to itself. This beautiful story was so magnificently illustrated in the life and in that story passed down to us of the master teacher, Jesus the Christ. In the Nag Hammadi library, we have the Gospel of Thomas. And the Gospel of Thomas is full of numbered esoteric sayings of Jesus relating to his knowledge of the cosmos and his knowledge of consciousness and his knowledge of this process of birthing what we call the Christ, which is known through world religions in many, many ways. But it is that birth of the absolute consciousness, the idea of man or woman in the divine mind of God, expressing in matter, in form, in reality, expressing as you, as me, and as every beloved child on this planet. In the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus said, "The man old in days will not hesitate to ask a small child 7 days old about the place of life, and he will live." Jesus goes on to say, "Recognize what is in your sight, and that which is hidden from you will become plain to you. For there is nothing hidden which will not become manifest." These are the teachings that awaken the Christ consciousness, that lead us to knowing that it is ours to incarnate as this Christ principle living in action, the cosmic Christ. But the ego likes to get distracted and likes to think that that's not what we're about, and will make up any idea, any story, any distraction around a moment to draw the mind into a sleeping state where we're not hearing the sounds, where we're not seeing the visions. And it takes courage. It takes courage to not separate ourselves from these scriptural stories. It takes courage to not fall asleep. It takes courage to stay awake and to recognize that for each of us, in every moment within ourselves and how we approach the world around us, we are birthing the peace child. Each one of us is raising it, rearing it, stewarding it, protecting it, nourishing it, nurturing it in each moment with every action, every thought, and every emotion that we create and that we attach to. This is the hero's journey, to recognize our role, to recognize that the author of creation has come here, been made manifest. And that is a great, great, magnificent calling and charge once one awakens to it. Joseph Campbell says in the Hero's Journey teachings that the second you hear the call, the moment you hear the call, you cannot fall asleep to it. The moment you hear those bells, you may be able to turn away, you may be able to drift off here and there, but you will never be able to turn off that call to awaken the cosmic nature of the divine within you. I want to share a couple of great quotes from a Unity quotable quote books. This is a book put together of, it's not a book that you can buy in bookstores, but it's a book of all the quotes of different Unity teachings and books that have been written. So I want to share with you a couple of the quotes about courage. "The new world will be brought forth by men and women who have the courage to look through appearances to the impossible dream, by those who will know that the dream is possible." Here's another one. "You must find the courage to simply toss aside as of no account every condition and phase of your life that fails to measure up to the standard of omnipresent good, and come empty-handed, as it were, to the throne of God." Throw aside every condition and phase of your life that fails to measure up to this standard. That's a great task, isn't it? To throw that aside. Courage and fear are not opposites. Courage does not mean the absence of fear, but its subordination. Courage does not mean the absence of fear, but its subordination. It takes a lot of courage to face a dark situation, and even more self-control and discipline to draw attention from the negative experience and place it squarely on God, the universal power which is far greater than we. Far greater than we. So that's the calling. That's the charge. To be in that state of consciousness where we are disciplined, where we are looking through the illusions and we are using our power to co-create peace in every moment. Now that sounds like a very big deal. And on a global scale, all you have to do is turn on the news or hear about the shopping at the first day of the Christmas season at Walmart, right? And you think, my Lord, do we have a lot in front of us to conquer? Right? Have you heard these stories? I mean, this is still happening, this whole thing of people, plowing over each other and to get presents and gifts and, right? It doesn't take long to see that humanity has a growing edge, right? A growing edge that maybe we would all be serving the same spirit if we stepped back a little bit from our material needs, from these illusions that draw us into confusion and chaos and draw us into a state that is not peaceful. In fact, it is a state that harms each other, is it not? And when there is a state of consciousness that seems to harm each other, even though in truth we can never be harmed, we begin to start putting out that first candle, that hope. It's a very dangerous thing to take that candle of hope and put that out. Because when that happens, we have to move back from that state of peace. And this is the human condition. This is the walk. Nothing wrong with it. It's the walk. But we have to move back from that state of peace, and we have to reignite that flame of hope, that flame of faith, so that, again, one can birth the peace. So how can we keep that flame lit all the time? Well, it takes a shift in consciousness. It takes making a decision that even if I don't see the light on that candle, I know it so deeply within the core of my being. I know it so deeply within the core of my being that it will never be extinguished. That it will not be extinguished by the actions of man or the circumstances of the world around me, not even by any emotional turmoil within me. When that happens, that candle is lit. And we can also begin to develop tools of interacting within this infinite universe and calling forth divine wisdom and divine guidance to show us and to remind us that that candle is lit. And through our very own designed God language, learn to listen and to see and to ask for that which we can listen to and see that will remind us, that will infuse us with that hope and that power. Today is the 33rd year of the celebration anniversary passing of the life of John Lennon. The celebration of his life and the consciousness that he brought to the planet through the Beatles, through the music, through the energy. To many, that can be that kind of a reminder, that kind of a celebration can be a reminder of how powerful one life purposefully lived can be. How much impact it can have. And when we have those reminders, no matter what they are to you, when we have those reminders and we pause for them, they remind us that that candle is lit. And they remind us that from that place, even something that turns out to seem like the opposite of peace can birth peace, can birth a consciousness that is nourishing, a consciousness that expands, a consciousness that is hopeful. This state of consciousness, we're taught in the scriptures, we're taught by the masters throughout the ages, that this state of consciousness, of peace, of faith, of love, of joy, is always everywhere available and present. That nothing can diminish it. Nothing can, in fact, even add to it, because it simply is. That in every moment we can access it, and that in any moment we don't think it's here, that it is simply a correction in mind. And when that correction in mind happens, we can recognize that it was here all along. The Unity Quotable Quotes book says, "The peace of every person on earth is here now. But it takes vision to bring it into visibility." It is here now, but it takes vision to bring it into visibility. Do we have that vision? Are we ready to practice our co-creative power of embracing the vision to bring it into visibility? When one is at peace, it says he is an open channel for all that is his by divine right. When one is at peace, we are an open channel for all that is ours by divine right. And this peace is already here. Goes on to say, the cornerstone of peace is love, and love is the assignment of this generation. Do you like that? Love is the assignment of this generation. The fulfillment of the new heaven and the new earth, wherein all humanity is unified. Wherein all humanity is unified. The last quote I want to share is this: if there is even one person with whom you are not feeling at peace, then you have work to do. And the work begins with you, in your thoughts and feelings and in your reactions. We can expand that quote to say something like this: if there is even one situation, circumstance, idea in your mind with whom you are not at peace, part of yourself with whom you are not at peace, then you have work to do. And the work begins with you, in your thoughts, in your feelings, and in your reactions. Can we draw back the tentacles of our creative power when we have that egoic temptation to start working it all out there and saying all of the issues are out there, or the peace even that I'm going to find is out there? Can we start drawing that back to focus in right here and say, as long as there is work to do in here, this is where my consciousness will begin. The trick is that we often get distracted by beginning out there, but that's just a story that takes us away from our path, that makes it longer and longer before we come back around to here, to acknowledging and really focusing on the center of truth, that my work is right here. Because this is the work that transforms the veil through which I see and through which I hear. And there are sounds going on around me. There are visions within my reach, in my midst, right here, graspable, that I am not seeing. Because the field or the frequency of vibration in which I'm inhabiting is not resonating in a way that those colors, those visions are coming to my eyes. But that certainly does not mean they don't exist. It does not mean they are any less powerful. It does not mean they are any less available to me, that they are any less mine and my world's. It's simply a step in consciousness. Mary and Elizabeth in the scripture took that step in consciousness. They both got great word in this season, in this metaphysical and mystical story that we retell every year. They got word that they were birthing a child. They got word that they were to do the unheard of. That in a time when one may be too old and another may be in too interesting of a circumstance to be able to birth the pure consciousness of light, they were called and they heard the call and they couldn't shut it off. They chose not to shut it off. And even though they may have been afraid, they took that fear and they applied their spiritual dominion and applied courage. Not to completely get rid of the fear, but to say, hello, fear, get in line. Use your force, use your power here, because the courage, the Christ consciousness is going to dominate this field of energy and is going to actually draw us to and through this experience. So no matter what I see in the world around me, I say yes. And I am ready to take on my calling. That is what Elizabeth and Mary said. I think that any time someone says yes to birthing a child, an amazing thing has occurred. Because not only are they saying yes to a walk of faith, not only are they saying yes to a walk of creation, but they are saying yes to that hope and to that faith in God, in themselves, and in all of humanity. I have a friend that just bore 2 little baby twins. They are being nourished at the hospital right now. She just had them. And it is remarkable to me to process anytime I see a baby and anytime I see that birth process and I see people taking that courageous step in this day and age with this world, with what it looks like, right? With what it looks like on the outside, to say, I am going to bring this most magnificent, most innocent, most gorgeous, beautiful being of light into this world. I believe that every time that happens, it is an absolute courageous stand of faith, saying, not just do I believe in God and do I believe in God the good omnipotent, but it is saying, I am here to co-create this peace, this faith, this light, this love, this God on earth. And it is saying to each one of us, I trust you with my child. I trust you with my child. I trust your child with my child. I trust our world and what we will create together with my most beloved heart that will be walking outside of my body. Please, thank you. Take on this calling and do well with it. Every time we look at a child, can we see that someone trusted us that much? Can we see that someone said to us, I trust that on your walk, on your path, you will pause to recognize how loved this being is? What kind of a consciousness can we bring to ourselves so that in every moment when we interact with people, and every moment is hopeful, right? It doesn't even have to be every moment. We'd be surprised at how few moments it takes to transform the consciousness. But if we can walk our walk and walk our talk, that in every age and every stage of life, we recognize that this is someone's beloved. And they have entrusted me as a brother and a sister on this planet to be light, to be in light with this being. That's the faith that Mary had to birth the Christ child, to let go of any story and any ideas and any challenges, any intuitions of how great and magnificent this birth would be, how it may even be a child that may be crucified and may be taken from her, whatever it may look like, but to have the faith and the strength to bring heaven to earth. Can we recognize that that is what every parent does when they birth a child? I trust you. I trust us. I trust love. And above all, I trust God. I trust the grand overall design. Isn't that an amazing step of courage and faith? Really? Isn't it an amazing step of courage and faith? And all of us are here through that step of courage and faith. All of us. All of us are here through that step of courage and faith. And if we bring it to an even more expansive level, we can recognize that this co-creative process is the process of the divine birthing you, the divine birthing me. That in fact, in the mind of God, there was an idea of you, a beloved energy of you, an energy of love so full, so expressive, so life-giving, so wondrous, so pure in the cosmic mind of God that it birthed you. So how do we walk around with that reverence? How do we walk around remembering the reverence that this is the Christ child, that in front of me here is the Christ child, that no matter what it looks like, that courage that we talked about, to look squarely at God and to take on our charge, to take on our challenge, to say, this is my practice. This is my job. It's not just my job. It's not just my birthright. It is my calling. It is my activity. It is my conscious destiny to see and to call forth a centered state of self that recognizes, we say namaste, that means the light in me beholds the light in you. that recognizes that light. In the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus said, "Love your brother like your soul. Guard him like the pupil of your eye." Love your brother like your soul. Guard him like the pupil of your eye. The separate sense of self, the ego self, when it feels attacked or separate, tends to attack back, to defend, to separate even more. But this calling is to breathe in, to come closer like a brother and sister. And like it says, protect it like the pupil of your eye, like that baby, like that child. Protect your brother, love your brother in that way. So can we all ask ourselves, what separates me from this practice? What separates me from peace? From loving my brother and protecting my brother, valuing my brother like the pupil of my eye and this world that I show up in? What separates me from that peace? And can I, instead of following what is the normal, can I follow the extraordinary? Can I follow the extraordinary and notice that any moment I am out of that practice, I am out of that peace, that I can take it not as something to fix on the outside, but I can take it as a call to transform on the inside, a call to investigate what in me is drawing me away, what in me is drawing me to criticize, to judge, to separate, to say that someone or something is not good enough or their way is not enough or whatever it is, you fill in the blank. What separates you from peace? Let's breathe into that question for a moment. Maybe it triggered a thought in your mind earlier when you said a circumstance or a situation or person that you're out of peace with. What triggers that for you? What separates me from peace? Because what separates me from peace is what separates me from another, is what separates me from self, is what separates me from God, all in my mind and my experience. But in truth and reality, it's always there. When we can tune in to the field of what separates us, what shuts us down, we have the ability to get clear and to get specific about what we want to call forth. So if something annoys me or frustrates me, and I start feeling a certain way, and I know when I'm feeling that way, I'm distancing myself, I can take a breath, take a moment, and pause, and instead of reacting, hear the call, see the need to investigate, and to ask myself to say, the presence of what would make a difference here? The presence of what would make a difference here? And keep it simple. If we really practice this, we'll notice that it's very, very simple. Okay, what is keeping me separate from my peace? What is keeping me separate from my brother, my sister? What is keeping me separate from my world? What's making me feel like I have to protect myself rather than I have this beautiful Christ child and I am the protector, I am the mother, father of this child? Because that's the heart of God, is coming together in that way. So what right now is keeping me from that? What is making me not see that? And once we tune into that, say, sweet spirit within me, what character, what quality shall I call forth in this moment to practice? And we will get answers. For me, the last time I did this practice, it was gentleness, something that could be so complicated that I could have to probably engage of years of therapy to try to figure it out. But instead, just pausing for a moment and saying, okay, here I am. I'm separate. This is how my mind is feeling. What would make a difference in this situation, in me, to birth peace? What would birth peace? If I can't change this situation, what would birth peace here? And for me, in this situation, it was gentleness. If I could be here in gentleness. then I could presence this with peace. Then I could show up in love. And then I held to that mantra, gentleness, 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 as my only focus. Can we take on that practice and let it be simple, but use a tool, incarnate the principles of gentleness through me? Whatever it is that's separating us in the moment. And then listen and see and watch it transform so that we can, in fact, love our brother or sister like our soul and guard them like the pupil of our eyes. There are a lot of perceptions and perspectives in this world that we live in. And we like to call them rights and wrongs, and we separate ourselves from each other and self by doing that. The Gospels have many accounts of the birth of Jesus, but different ones, right? Many details to those accounts. There's 2 Gospels in which it shares the birth of Jesus, one that it's not mentioned and one that is a mystical birth, that it's not told in the traditional way. And the story we have of the birth story is a collection of the 2 Gospels. It's a collection of the ideas. Now, to some people, that is evidence that these are not facts. This is not a real story. This is confusing. People are, taking this part and not taking that part. The whole select what you want to select out of the Bible kind of thing. But if we take this text mystically and if we take it metaphysically, we can recognize the beauty in these diverse stories, the beauty in that there is one gospel account that doesn't even share the birth story. There is another gospel account that shares the birth story, and we, hear about the wise men, the kings, all this royalty, that it's acknowledged, it's celebrated. This is a sharp affair. And then we have this account where, the lay people of the time, the shepherds, are the ones that got it and saw it, and they celebrated it, but they celebrated it in their little down-home, earthy way. Right? And then we have the mystical one, the mystical story of the birth of light in John, that it's about the light and the light coming to the world. This is the true light, the light that enlightens everyone, and it came into the world, it comes into the world, and it lights every man. We have those 4 stories and those 4 accounts in one book. Why? So that we argue about the different ways and what's right and wrong, so that we separate ourselves from it, or so that we embrace the allness of it and recognize that this birth of peace, this birth of the Christ child, this birth of the cosmic Christ consciousness within each of us is born in a diversity of ways. That it is recognized in a diversity of ways. That it is seen and heard in a diversity of ways. That in fact, some people don't even see it or hear it coming. And others see it and get ready and prepare. Others celebrate. Others, maybe from the time they were a young child, as in Mary, knew this is going to happen in me, through me, and as me. And they dedicate their entire life to it. And some, it goes unnoticed, unrecognized, uncelebrated, but still it arrives. Whether it's seen or unseen, heard or unheard, witnessed or undocumented, celebrated simply or honorably, makes no difference, because there are all ways for this light to unfold, and each one of us is here to create as an expression of the author of creation. The Christ is here, becoming human on earth. This process didn't stop 2,000 years ago. This process is constant. So let us ask ourselves in every moment, because the moment is the only moment that we have, what quality do I need to birth the Prince of Peace within me, to birth the peace in this moment, through me, in me, and as me, so that I can recognize myself as an expression of the divine, and I can recognize other as an expression of the divine. And I can get that attention, the attention of the divine. Share a little snippet from this morning's rehearsal. I'm going to put our team on the spot here. But the music rehearsal was going on this morning, and there were a couple calls for attention one, I won't give names here, but one person saying to another, hey you, hey you, hey you. Can you pay attention to me? Can you pay attention to me? So if it was John, hey John, hey John, hey John. Like, can you see me? Finally, the person said, Daddy. And all of a sudden, they got the attention of the one they were trying to get, right? Just said, Daddy. I'm sitting in the back room when I hear this. But is that not the truth of the story in every moment, right? That in every moment, if we are calling by a name that is distant, by an energy field that is separate, all one has to do in every moment is remember, Daddy, Mama, brother, sister. That was the teaching of the master teacher. He broke all of the traditions and called God Papa, fully recognizing that the beloved and the divine is right here within us and among us all of the time. So let us bring that truth into physical reality, moment by moment, breath by breath. Namaste.